Rachel found herself standing in line at a food truck she'd never been to before, tucked between a record store and a tattoo parlor off Ninth. The air smelled like grilled vegetables and garlic and warm bread, the kind of scent that curled around you and whispered, "Stay a while."
Her castmate Mark had been raving about the Mediterranean menu and the wealth of vegan options for weeks now, but Rachel hadn't had the time or inclination to seek the truck yet. She'd had so many late-night rehearsals that it was usually gone anyway by the time she got out. But tonight, Mark confirmed, was Monday. The truck was sure to still be there. Plus, Rachel was released from rehearsals early. The director needed only the ensemble cast to stick around for that night for new blocking and choreography changes.
With an earlier-than-expected free evening, she set out to the location where Mark said she'd find the truck. Turning the corner onto 9th Avenue, she spotted it. The Raven and Crescent Moon logo was just as Mark described, charming and alluring. But that wasn't what particularly caught her attention. It was the truck's name. Huddy's Homestyle.
Her curiosity spiked. Hudson is a very common name in this town, and Huddy could mean a lot of other things, though she couldn't think of a single one just then. But still. There was a line 5 deep at the window, and the truck was partially in the shadows, thanks to a broken streetlight. The city really needed to do a better job at repairing those in a timelier manner, especially in the theater district, which always has so much foot traffic. It unnerved her to walk on darkened streets.
She sighed, taking her place in line and reaching for her cell phone, deciding to kill time while she waited. She was still half in rehearsal mode, hair pinned up messily, black tights under an oversized lilac-purple sweater, voice hoarse from singing scales. She already felt grimy from all the dancing under those hot stage lights, but this was the life she'd chosen, and she loved every minute of it, even if it was a lonely path most of the time.
The hours she kept made it difficult to have much of a social life, and anyone new she could possibly meet would inevitably be a co-worker. She wasn't a fan of working her way through the few available straight men she might be cast with. Anyway, there weren't any that caught her attention to even consider dating them. Especially not when a certain tall, brooding ex-Marine was holding her thoughts hostage.
Her phone buzzed in her palm with unanswered messages, though none of them from him. She's not sure why she thought he'd call her, really. She must have made a complete fool of herself that first drunken night at the bar. Maybe if she'd been more direct at that second meeting, but she decided to play it safe. Something about him didn't read safe, though.
She was starving and impatient, thumbing through her notifications as the line crept forward. She could finally see the menu written on a whiteboard under plexiglass on the side of the truck. Spotting a rare jackfruit shawarma, her mouth watered and her belly sang its praises. She never said her stomach growled. That was uncivilized.
When she finally reached the window, she was still flicking the screens on her phone. In true New Yorker fashion, she started calling out her order while still focused on her digital media. When she heard no confirmation or acknowledgement, she looked up and forgot how to breathe.
Finn Hudson was standing in the window, sleeves rolled to the elbow, sweat beaded across his brow and a dish towel slung over one shoulder. Oh, and he was frozen like a statue, staring back at her. For a second, neither of them moved. "It's you." "I had no idea," she said finally, her voice caught somewhere between disbelief and amusement.
Finn's mouth tilted into a lopsided grin. "Hi, Rachel. Oh, so you do remember me. I was just confused since it's been, 4 days now?" She held up her phone, shaking it a little. And yet, oops, no sign of life yet from a certain soldier boy. He bit the inside of his cheek. She's so damn cute he didn't know what to do with himself.
"Guess I should have called." "You guess?" She challenged, crossing her arms, though her pulse was sprinting. He corrected himself, looking a bit stiff, arms locked at the elbows, leaning on his fists against the counter. I got busy, sorry. But I didn't forget you."
Rachel's laugh was soft, exasperated. "Are you sure? I mean, you must have obnoxiously drunk women throw themselves at you all the time, then follow up with a Sharpie-inscribed tattoo of their phone number on your hand."
That broke his composure.
Yeah.
He laughed, the sound low and unguarded, a sound that spread warmth up her neck. "All the time. Why do you think I hide in here? It's safe from predators like that."
Think about the psychological whiplash Finn is experiencing here. He is a trained sniper. He's used to having the high ground, literally tracking her from rooftops across the street. He is the watcher. Now the target has walked right up to his mobile command center. The hunter has become the hunted.
Right. And look at how his mind operates when she casually mentions her castmate Mark. The text says, Mark. He didn't remember that name. He would have to run a background check. Who the hell is Mark? Even though he is mesmerized by her, his brain is still functioning like a paranoid intelligence officer.
Yes, his paranoia shows he is still fundamentally in mission mode. But then, driven entirely by his physical desire, he makes a massive tactical error.
He sure does. Listen to this. Hey, soldier, did you go somewhere? Sorry. Side effects of war, maybe. Did you say something? It's fine. Yes, I was asking if you still had the jackfruit shawarma. It sounds amazing.
He nodded. Yep. The shawarma and anything else you'd like is on the house. He stared silently at her a hard minute as she was in the middle of objecting to a free meal when he cut her off. You ever been inside one of these? He knew this was a risky move, but his mind was made up. He tossed the towel aside and nodded toward the side door.
She arched a brow, impish grin, pulling at the corner of her lips.
No.
Why, Finn Hudson, are you offering me a private kitchen tour of your secret drunk girl hideaway? That sounds a little like being invited into Batman's private sanctuary. How scandalous.
His mind echoed a warning about how close to on the money she was, then she spoke again. You might need a new hiding place if I come in there. He shrugged, smiling. Risky. But I'm good at finding new hiding places. It wasn't even a lie.
I am pausing us again because her Batman comparison is incredible. She jokingly compares the food truck to the Batcave, and she has no idea how accurate she is. By inviting her inside, he is allowing her to cross the threshold into his operational sanctuary.
It's a violation of every protocol he has. Think of Finn's discipline like a hyperbaric chamber. It's a sealed environment that keeps the immense pressure of his trauma and his violent lifestyle from crushing him. But Rachel is a crack in the glass. The moment he unlocks that side door and physically lets her into his space, the pressure differential violently equalizes. His entire defensive structure is about to implode.
Let's read that implosion. How are you now? That sounds a little creepy. Should I be scared? I mean, if that's true, you could be hiding anywhere. Maybe even secretly watching me, and I'd never know.
True, he said flatly, realizing she obviously doesn't have a clue about his sniper perch across the street from her apartment, or that more than light rigging might be hovering over her stage. Though judging by the way her eyes were still boring into him as if he was on the menu, he didn't think she much cared.
So, is this you bribing me with food to make up for your unforgivable failure to call sooner?
Rachel looked at the tall man inside the truck with its tensing biceps and honey cinnamon eyes and decided that was reason enough for her sudden boldness. She was never this forward with men. She generally believed if they were chivalrous and worth her time, they'd pursue her. But Finn Hudson wasn't most men, and she got the sense she'd be an idiot to wait for him to follow a rule book he'd never read.
At a minimum, she wanted the chance to find out. And she sure as hell wasn't letting him forget her. Not this time. Sure. Let's go with that, he winked. Then pulled the metal blind down on the order window, which read, "The chef is out," before reappearing in the door of what would be a passenger seat if the van had one.
Leaning half and half out of the truck, he extended a hand to her. "Come on up, and I'll make you that shawarma."
And now, Rachel has agency. Once she is inside that tight stainless steel space, the banter begins to evaporate and the physical proximity completely takes over. Let's read this sequence, because the chemistry is intensely combustible.
Taking his hand in delicate yet dramatic fashion, she squealed as his tug practically lifted her off the ground and into the truck in one swift motion. The inside of the truck was smaller than she expected, not that she had any real inkling what to expect. It was rather dimly lit, close quarters, and very warm. Every surface gleamed with stainless steel, every movement of his broad shoulders brushed too close to hers.
Wow. This is not a very large space for someone of your stature, she teased. He turned to face her. Are you saying I'm too big? No, you fit well, I'm sure. It's just a tight squeeze, maybe, she said, biting her bottom lip. So, are you going to give you the grand tour?
He swallowed thickly, watching her bite that bottom lip. She'd done it on the dance floor that night, and he already knew what it tasted like, at least. He knew what it tasted like, marinated in cosmopolitans and cherry lip gloss. He wondered if she had a new flavor tonight. Shaking it off, he motioned to the kitchen space, showing her where the cold storage was and how the burners worked.
He explained the rhythm of orders, the muscle memory of the trade. It's like a dance, he said, tapping a spatula against the grill. Fast, loud, and sometimes I have an audience watching from the window. He already had the jackfruit and the chickpeas on the grill, sprinkling on seasonings as he talked.
Its performance sounds just like Broadway, she said, watching him move with that confident, easy rhythm. It kind of is, he replied, flashing a half grin again, just with fewer costumes and more grease burns. He'd started cooking without asking if she had any preferences for this dish, but she hadn't mentioned any special requests, so he kept moving. He adjusted the heat as the fruit and peas sizzled.
Rachel perched on the narrow counter, legs crossed, following the cadence of his movements. Her eyes were focused on the flex of muscles in his forearms, the grip strength in his large hands. Rough, powerful hands she very distinctly remembered the feel of against the small of her back and the hollows of her cheeks. She'd even had a belated memory of holding onto one while she brazenly stole a sip of his disgustingly bitter whiskey drink, whatever it was.
You know, she said lightly, this is the most forward thing a man's done for me in ages. Cooking dinner, feeding me, yes, without demanding something in return.
He looked over his shoulder. Who said I'm not? Something in his tone pulled the air tight between them. The sizzle of the grill filled the silence. She slipped down from the counter, her soft-soled flats tapping quietly against the metal floor. You're a little infuriating, she murmured, a gleam in her eye.
I've heard, especially after being forced to a dance floor and practically being attacked by some tiny, sexy woman. The tease in his tone was evident, and his adorableness was rocking her senses into another stratosphere.
You think I'm sexy. I think you're dangerous, he said after a beat, without looking up from the grill. He swiped a finger into the hot juices of the food in the pan and held it up to her. Here, taste. Tell me if it's too spicy.
Her breath caught on his words. Without breaking eye contact, she leaned forward and wrapped her lips around his index finger, quickly releasing it. She moaned a little, not missing the change in his expression when she did. Shaking her head with a soft smile, she concluded, No, just the right amount of heat and sweet.
Finn Hudson was probably the sexiest man she'd ever met. He'd been invading her dreams for a week, and now, in this enclosed space while he prepared food for her, he wasn't just sexy, he was sinful. He invited her into that sinfulness too. And he thinks she's the dangerous one.
Santana's words echoed in her mind then about letting her inner goddess decide her fate, and then she didn't even think about it. She just moved. She grabbed him by the upper part of his kiss the cook apron, read the words, and looked up into his eyes.
Guess it would be rude not to follow Chef's orders, she breathed as she tugged him down, catching his mouth with hers before she could second-guess the impulse. He froze for half a heartbeat, then he kissed her back, rough and certain as their bodies moved together. A spatula clattered to the floor. Somewhere behind him, the grill hissed, and he yanked the pan off the heat without looking.
Wait, I need to completely interrupt this because we have to talk about Finn's internal monologue here. Listen to how he tries to justify this absolute failure of discipline.
Oh, this is the best part.
He'd turned over the idea of her in his mind a million ways from a million angles. Weeks were spent convincing himself she was off limits, she was a target he was still vetting, and then she'd kissed him 4 days ago and he'd come undone. So he decided finally that getting close to her could be a tactical move. He could complete his recon from the inside, all the better to know her by actually knowing her. Sure, he'd just be proving her innocence with finality. That plan involved figuring out how to keep his hands to himself, though, a plan he was still formulating.
I'm sorry, but I call absolute nonsense on this. Tactical recon from the inside. Yeah. He's a highly trained sniper. Are we really supposed to believe he thinks sleeping with his assassination target is a valid intelligence-gathering method? He is completely lying to himself, isn't he?
Oh, 100%. It is pure, unfiltered cognitive dissonance. Remember what we discussed earlier. Finn's brain is a rigid military machine. He cannot simply admit, I am overwhelmed by physical desire and I'm going to act irresponsibly. That would break his sense of self.
Right.
His brain literally cannot reconcile the concept of a ruthless Volkov mob associate with the reality of this vegan theater nerd standing in front of him. So his military mind invents a tactical excuse. He frames his own mental breakdown as reconnaissance to justify his biological urges. It's a textbook example of how highly disciplined people rationalize their own self-destruction.
He's jumping off a cliff and telling himself he's just testing gravity. Let's see how well that tactical plan holds up.
Yeah, let's. But with her soft, warm hands slipping under his shirt across his chest, all that careful logic went out the window, especially when she pushed herself up into his arms, almost a jump. He caught her, grabbing her thighs for support, and she tied her amazingly toned dancer's legs around his waist.
He groaned into her mouth. The heat from between her legs brushed right against his growing erection, and he wasn't sure which way was up all of a sudden. What do you want, Rachel? He growled in her ear. Because this seems a bit, I want you, Finn.
His lips pulled the soft, salty skin of her pulse point in and sucked hard.
You do, huh? I do, she exhaled. Now.
Yeah.
Right here. Here, now. That's an order, soldier, she mewed in his arms, her fingers gripping at his hair.
That's an order there. If we pause the steaminess for just a second, the character significance of that line is staggering. Think about Rachel's journey. A week ago, she was crying into her oatmeal because a mediocre man named Ethan abandoned her. She felt entirely powerless. Here, she is taking total, unapologetic control of her sexuality. Exactly. By using the phrase, that's an order, she is taking Finn's military background, the very thing that makes him so dangerous and disciplined, and subverting it to claim her own power. She is flipping the script on the power dynamics of the entire story.
She is the commanding officer now, and he surrenders completely. That sound was the most erotic, divine thing he ever heard. She tasted better than he could have imagined. Sweaty saltiness and her floral perfume mixed together, and F-U-C-K. He didn't have a condom here, did he?
Rachel, you should maybe, Damn it, I don't have anything on me here. She pulled her head back far enough to see his face. You mean a condom? He practically blushed. What the hell was his problem? He wasn't some snot-nosed hormonal teenager. He was a man. He should be able to say condom to her.
Before he could say more, she said, I'm clean and on the pill. I haven't had sex in almost a year. When's the last time you had sex? His eyes searched hers. Was she lying? He really didn't think she was capable, and this information landed like fresh oxygen.
Longer. Much. So you're clean. Never had an STD. I can show you my health records if you want, but no, never. You. She giggled. That won't be necessary, I believe you. And no, never. I believe you, he said, kissing her hard. Good. You may proceed.
She tugged the apron off, tossed it aside, and reached for his shirt, laughter catching as the truck shifted under their feet. His hands were already drifting under her sweater, cupping her breasts. She dropped her feet back down to the floor, tucked up his navy Henley shirt to expose the skin of his chest, but he did one better and tugged it off.
Her hot lips attached first to his Adam's apple, then dropped lower. She felt his rough hands dragging up her spine while she placed hot, wet kisses over his pecs, pausing on a scar. She traced it first with her fingertip, wondering if this was a war wound.
He seemed to read her mind when he muttered shrapnel, flesh wound. His skin blazed under her touch. She kissed the marred skin of his scar and dragged her mouth lower. As her tongue flicked over his puckered nipple, he felt himself harden, and all the muscles in his body tensed in ways he hadn't felt in maybe ever.
Jesus, he muttered, reaching for her perfect round ass. Praying now, because this is the furthest thing from church I can think of, she teased.
He groaned and forced her face up to his mouth hungry and hot against hers. Tilting her jaw, his tongue dipped deep into her mouth, and he was already seeing white lights flashing behind his eyes at the sensation it drew from other places in his body. Just kissing Rachel was like an out-of-body experience.
His heart hammered against its bony cage like it did back at basic training the first time live ammo was being fired off around them. He was a live wire. Every nerve ending was jumping with anticipation, and she seemed to be reacting the same way. He could feel her pulse vibrating in her neck against his tongue, could feel the heave of her chest against him.
Losing herself completely in the feel of his hands and his mouth on her body, she needed more. She was never this kind of impulsive, but this felt fucking amazing. Empowering. She tore the sweater up and over her head, leaving her in a tight dancer's tank top. He hiked it up over her chest to her neck and hunched down, taking a nipple into his mouth.
I'll do my penance later, he muttered. I'll have a lot more sins to report by then.
You really have to appreciate the contrast the author is building here. The setting is incredibly unglamorous. It's a cramped, dimly lit, humid food truck that smells like grease and garlic. It's a literal pressure cooker. But emotionally, it is an explosive release for both of them. It strips away all the pretension of their respective lives.
It really does. Rachel laughed and arched into his touch, pressed herself tighter against his talented mouth as her eyes rolled back in her head. Ethan was never like this with her, raw and unfiltered, and for the first time she was glad it wasn't him right now.
He spun them around and reached for the lever of a fold-up counter on the wall behind the driver's seat. Space-saving, he grunted when it dropped. Without breaking their kiss, he lifted her effortlessly by the waist and dropped her onto it.
Oh, she squeaked, laughing against his lips. That's new. You like efficiency, he said, as she traced the column of his neck and her tongue found his ear. I love efficiency, she whispered hotly against it.
He undid the fly of his jeans with one hand, the other still palming her breast, as she wrestled with tugging off her tights. She shoved them down her legs with her feet, only freeing one foot before giving up. Oh my God, Finn, you feel so good, she muttered as his mouth reconnected with her neck, one hand on her chest, the other palming her sex through her panties.
She reached for the elastic of his boxer briefs and tugged down. When his length stood straight and erect, pointing at her, she smiled. Impressive equipment, soldier. You know how to handle that gun. I think I do okay. The question is, do you?
She gripped him in her palm and stroked from base to tip. I think I can feel my way through. His fingers pushed down the front of her silk panties, and she opened her legs wider. He ducked down to swirl his tongue around her nipple. I want to taste you, Rachel Berry, he murmured as he caught her tight taut butt in his teeth.
Don't tell, Sho, she said breathlessly. The next thing she knew, her panties were dangling off the same foot as her tights, her legs draped over his shoulders, and he'd hoisted her up in the air till her head was touching the ceiling of the van.
He pressed her back to the wall, and his mouth made contact with her. His name fell like a song from her lips as he tasted, flicked, sucked, and teased her sex in ways she'd swear she's never been touched before.
Oh, God, Finn.
She moaned, "Don't stop, don't dare."
One hand gripped the top of his head, the other slapped against the ceiling of the truck. Yes. Come for me, Rachel. His breath was hot against her moist skin, and the roughness of his whiskers just titillated her further.
Her hips rocked against him involuntarily, heat blooming from within, short-circuiting her nerves. This was unlike any feeling she'd ever experienced, and she knew she'd made the right decision with him when a constellation of stars suddenly exploded behind her eyes. His name keened from her mouth as a powerful orgasm gripped her.
He felt her climax against his mouth, and he readied himself, gripping his own length. He gently guided her back down the wall to the fold-out counter, her legs still propped up over his shoulders. Then he positioned himself, asking one last time, "You're sure you really want it?"
God, yes. I want you inside me. I need. She was barely coherent, still surfing the waves of her own pleasure. Maybe he'd regret these choices later. But he knew he had her consent, and he was fucking helpless to stop now.
He slid slowly into her and thought he might blow it in one thrust. She was so tight and warm and everything he hadn't allowed himself to think about in years. But he had been thinking about it lately, with her.
She'd been the star more than once in his dreams, and in the shower a few times too. He hated that he already had this much awareness of her, to who she was, and he was still a veritable stranger to her. But he'd change that now.
Fuck, Rachel. You, Christ. His jaw tightened to keep his teeth from chattering. Her moaned response was all the sound she could make as her hips moved against him, encouraging him to do the same.
He changed her position, wrapping her legs around his waist, and stood them up in a freestand in the cramped space. One arm cradled under her ass and thighs for support, the other wrapped around her back. She bounced as he thrust, and he thought for a moment he could die like this, buried deep inside her, and he wouldn't regret it if he did.
Oh, you are amazing, she managed. Yes, more. She breathed when his mouth found hers again. She gave orders, how fast and how hard, and he followed her commands like the soldier he was until she was pinned against the wall, and he was grunting her name into her shoulder with his powerful release.
She felt his shudder, felt the liquid heat of him inside her, and never felt more powerful in her life. Her inner goddess was completely sated, and Sand would be fucking proud of her if she only knew.
She pulled his face to hers and half laughed, half moaned against his mouth. "You're kind of a mystery, Finn Hudson," she breathed, "and possibly the best sex of my life."
He let himself sink into those espresso eyes, pushed her sweat-damp, now-wrecked hair away from her face, and kissed her forehead. "You're definitely the best of mine," he breathed, and kissed her mouth hotly again. When their laughter faded, what was left was silence, broken only by their ragged breathing and the faint hiss of the grill cooling. "I'm still really hungry, and that sandwich sounded so good," she giggled, and he laughed with her.
After the world was smaller, quieter, steam fogged the windows of the truck, and the sounds of the city streets at night could be heard faintly through the closed door, but it all seemed more distant now. Rachel sat half-dressed on the counter, his black hoodie around her shoulders.
He refired the grill and finished making 2 jackfruit wraps, passing her one on a foil wrapper. Their fingers brushed as she took it and smiled faintly, ignoring the chills that zapped along her skin.
"Ami guri-samazung," she hummed through a mouth of food, and he chuckled, pride bubbling in his chest. "Not bad for a jarhead in a tin can, huh?" he joked. He passed her a fountain iced tea, and she gulped it greedily in the still-too-warm space.
Finn, seriously, this is incredible. Better than I've had at the most upscale vegan places in this city so far. You're a fantastic cook, and the flavor, it's so exotic I can't place it. What is it?
He grinned at her, taking in her earnest, awed eyes. They shined like molten fudge, and he could get lost in them forever if he let himself. No way were they eyes of an ice queen. Secret recipe. I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. She laughed like music, and his stomach turned at his own dark joke. He was so fucked right now there weren't words.
He was so fucked right now. His stomach turns because the reality of the situation hits him. Sharing a joke, feeding her, wiping her hair, these are acts of profound civilian intimacy. The Wraith doesn't do intimacy. He has humanized his target to the point of absolute no return.
Exactly. When he makes the joke, I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, the cognitive dissonance finally breaks. He can no longer pretend this was a tactical recon mission. He is looking at a woman he cares for who is actively slated for death by his own unit. The hyperbaric chamber has imploded.
Let's read the final lines. You headed home after this. Yeah, she said, after swallowing another generous mouthful. You. Yeah, he said, a hand resting on her thigh. He still couldn't believe how soft her skin was. I mean, I have to clear down the truck for the night, which takes a while. But take your time, eat. I'll drive you home after.
When she polished off the shawarma and asked if there was dessert, he produced a vegan cheesecake slice from the cooler and dripped some berry compote topping over it. I'd like to see you again, she said as he handed it to her. Soon.
He grinned. I'd like that too, he said, leaning over to kiss the crown of her head. And I promise to call next time. You better.
You'd better. It ends on a promise. It's a beautifully sweet, completely normal dating moment that is layered over a violently ticking time bomb.
Come on up, and I'll make you that shawarma.
So is this you bribing me with food to make up for your failure to call sooner?
Sure, let's go with that. Are you saying I'm too big?
No, you fit well. It's just a tight squeeze, maybe.
I've heard.
You think I'm sexy?
Here, taste.
No, just right. I'd like to see you again.
Soon.
Soon.
I'd like that too. And I promise to call next time.
You'd better.